Hi AP Psychology students, and welcome back. Today we are continuing learning about the biological basis of human behavior and focusing on the individual neuron, right? So in the last video we talked about the nervous system and the endocrine system, and today we're going to get in more specifics about the parts of the neuron and what the role of each of those parts is. And this aligns with the College Board learning objectives, explain how the structures and functions of the typical neurons in the central nervous system affect behavior and mental processes. So, remember our essential questions are, what are the basic structures of a neuron, and what is the function of each structure in supporting neural communication? All right, let's get started. All right, so when we think about neurons overall, right, wondering kind of like what the definition of a neuron is, it's just a nerve cell, right? And those nerve cells are the building blocks of the nervous system, right? The nervous system is made up of hundreds and thousands and billions of neurons. So yes, I said billions with a B. Yeah, over 100 billion neurons in our bodies. Some sources say 86 billion, some say over 100 billion. Either way, it's a ton. About 500,000 are those motor neurons. So those are the neurons that go from the spinal cord out to the muscles and glands and control muscle action. Then we have the sensory neurons, about 10 million of those, so more sensory neurons. And those are the ones that are your sensory receptors. They are your sense of touch, taste, smell, etc. And they go from your sensory receptors up into the spinal cord up to the brain. And then all the rest of them, so about 99%, are these inner neurons. And those are the neurons that are in the spinal cord and in the brain, and they are the connection between the sensory and the motor neurons. Now, despite the fact that these neurons have different functions, they are all very similar in design. And so we're going to just talk about the design of a basic neuron in order to better increase our understanding. Okay, so this is a picture of a basic neuron, and we're going to keep coming back to this picture. Every slide, there's going to be new parts added on to help you understand the role that they play. So in this slide, we have dendrites and cell body. So the dendrites are these tree-looking branchy extensions, right? And their job is to receive messages. So they listen, right? And then they take the message and they move it down the axon. The cell body contains the nucleus, but realistically, the reason I want you to know the cell body is because I want you to know that that's where the dendrites are connected to. Sometimes students get confused between what's the beginning and the end of a neuron because they look similar on both sides. And so if you look for the cell body, the dendrites are attached to the cell body, and they take the message and move it towards the cell body. The next structure we're adding is the axon. So as you can see, the axon takes the message away from the cell body, axons away. So the axon is that segmented extension, right? And it takes the message away from the cell body to other neurons, to muscles, to glands, depending on where its function is and where it's located in the body. Each neuron only has one axon, and axons can be short or long. I think the longest axon you have in your body is from your spinal cord all the way down to your toes. So yes, there's one neuron with one long axon that does some of that connecting. All right, the next part we're going to add on is that myelin sheath. So if you'll notice, the myelin sheath is actually covering the axon, right? It's a layer of fatty tissue that insulates it, that protects it. And really what it protects is the speed of the message. So without the myelin, the message can slow down or not get transferred all the way. Now, not all neurons are myelinated. Neurons that do have a myelin sheath are called myelinated. The ones who don't are called non-myelinated. And there are certain disorders where people have like their myelin gets attacked from within, an autoimmune disease, and that ends up developing in multiple sclerosis. So the myelin can get attacked through various autoimmune diseases. Okay, and the last part of the neuron that we're going to learn about is the terminal branches. So like I said, some people think the terminal branches and the dendrites look similar. They are both kind of like branchy looking. So remembering that the dendrites connect to the cell body, and the terminal branches, I always think of like a terminal, like where the plane takes off from. If you're at an airport, it's the end, or like terminal, like is the end of. So the terminal branches of the axon are the end of the axon, right? And they have a little chemical in them that they release the chemical once the message gets there, and that chemical is what moves the message from one neuron to the next. All right, and we're going to go into more detail about how two neurons communicate or talk to each other in the next video, but this was just to give you a basic understanding of the parts of one neuron before we talk about multiple neurons. So there is one other cell in the nervous system that you need to be aware of, and this is a glial cell. So glial cells, if you take a look at this visual right here, you see that the neurons, we have our cell body, our dendrites, our axon, and we have our terminal buttons, and again, another neuron, cell body, dendrites, axon, and terminal branches. And you see that then we have these purple cells, blue, and green. And those are 3 different types of glial cells. You don't need to know the difference between them, just knowing what their role is. So they support, nourish, and protect neurons. Really, one of the biggest things that they do is creating myelin. So you can see those purple cells are like attached to the myelin. They create that myelin. They also clean up waste from messages that cells send, and they are especially known for being important to thinking and memory. So we find that people who have high intelligence, have a higher number of glial cells and connections between glial cells in the nervous system. All right, that's all for now, AP Psychos. Make sure you stop and see if you can answer these essential questions. And remember, psychology is flippin' awesome.